Monday, November 7th, in Van Nuys, California, Shorty Rogers died at the age of 70. He was one of those, to quote, really, a giant of jazz. And Shorty Rogers and his giants were synonymous with what was West Coast. Among his compatriots, a man by the name of Bill Perkins. And I have Bill on the line. He's been in concert at the Musicians Association in L.A., and I want to welcome him in after a long day. Thank you for joining us on Minnesota Public Radio.
It's my pleasure.
Bill, you had known Shorty for quite some time, hadn't you?
Oh, yes, indeed I have. I guess our association goes back at least 30 years.
How did you happen to meet him?
Oh, I could hardly remember the day I met him, but I remember the day that he recommended me to Woody Herman's band, because that was my big break as a musician.
To work in that Reed section?
Yes. And I believe that Shorty was playing with Woody at that time while Woody was at the Palladium. I think it was 1951. And but I really didn't know that Shorty had recommended me. And I guess we'd played together somewhere locally. And I didn't realize that he's the guy that got me on the band until many years later, because that was Shorty's nature. He really never said much.
A modest man?
A very modest man.
When you joined Woody Herman, were you playing that composition, Keen and Peachy, that he contributed to the book?
Oh, yes. We used to play that. Oh, yeah, we played many of Shorty's things.
Well, Shorty's compositions were really, they had such delightful titles, didn't they? As well as the whole concept that he was able to,
Had a great sense of humor, and he did have catchy titles, but the important part is that the scope of his music is just kind of astonishing. Going back to those days when he was a big band jazz arranger, and he expanded so much on that. He did so many great movie scores, and he was a pioneer in many respects in voicings, modal voicings, and modern harmony, chords and fourths and stuff like that. Shorts was really in on the beginning of that. I think a lot of people forget that.
He certainly covered a wide span when you consider that he'd work on composing soundtrack to specification with people like Leigh Stevens and Elmer Bernstein and others. That was a challenge in itself, not as free as working the jazz orchestra and small combo.
Indeed, no, but he really rose to the occasion, and he became a pretty fair conductor. And as on more than one occasion, I can remember working with him in film studios, and was amazed at how he developed, and he became a very effective conductor. But what amazes me once again about Shorty is, as I said before, the scope of his writing. Most people that associate him with the West Coast jazz and the swinging and the big band things, a lot of people I don't think are aware of what an important influence he was in film scoring using jazz themes. Very big influence.
In creating jazz themes for description in the soundtrack.
Yes.
Using those devices.
And of course, he became a very fluent writer. He wrote cues, dramatic cues, and things like that. There's many television shows that I remember playing on that Shorty would, do the weekly scores for them and stuff like that. So he really had a broad concept, but he had such a individual flavor to his writing that, which is a rare thing. There was always a Shorty feeling to those of it that knew him, and I could almost spot, even if he wrote just a straight dramatic cue without a jazz concept at all. And as you know, Shorty studied very seriously with, I believe...
was it Dr. Wesley LaViolette?
Viollet, yeah.
Is it Violet?
Yeah, I forget how to pronounce it. Laviolette?
I'm not sure either.
But, like Johnny Mandel, they both studied very seriously into composition, and which is necessary for a good film composer.
And he came up through the High School of Music and Arts in New York City and later the Los Angeles Conservatory too, didn't he?
Yes.
Well, in your work with him, say in the jazz perspective, the Lighthouse tradition, Howard Rumsey's, or the Lighthouse at Hermosa Beach, that was another life altogether, or another reference, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was another aspect. I wasn't in on the original part of the Lighthouse because I was on the road actually with Woody and Stan, but somehow through the years I can remember that I did get to play with Shorty under different circumstances, everything from jazz record dates to jazz concerts, and of course I played with him down at the Lighthouse too, but that was a whole other aspect, and he was kind of like a nucleus for jazz players. He just was a center. He was a great leader. As a matter of fact, in recent years, before he got too ill to play, he and I used to play with a quintet locally here, and he was just a natural band leader. He just knew correct tempos and everything else. And not too long ago, we did some concerts in Phoenix, Arizona, for a guy named Bob Lorenz, who would bring up ex-Stan Kenton players. And as a matter of fact, there's a CD coming out with Shorts and me playing with a local rhythm section up there. But I always loved to play with Shorts, and I just I'm going to miss him because I just was hoping we could get together and play again, quite frankly. But he never said much about his illness, and I have a feeling he knew he was in pretty bad shape at least 6 to 8 months ago, but he didn't say much. So I kept hoping.
Well, the spirit and his recorded legacy lives on, doesn't it?
It does indeed, and this recent jazz festival that Ken Poston put on at Redondo Beach was, up until, within a couple of weeks, I guess, before it went on, we were hoping that Shorty would be able to at least show up, and his spirit was, it was kind of built around Shorty. It was very sad that he wasn't there, and especially in that area because it was very close to the Lighthouse, and as a matter of fact, one of the concerts was actually given at the original Lighthouse, I think with Buddy Collette. So it was very sad.
Well, Bill, I know it's been a long day, and I want to thank you for taking time to speak about Shorty Rogers and describe his contributions and his leadership and his sense of humor. And when you think about, I suppose the compositions outside of the soundtrack with Martians Go Home and Popo and Here's That Old Martian Again and Less is More and Lotus Bud, things like that. He must have been a delightful person to be around.
And those were wonderful compositions. And the Lighthouse All-Stars group that we had recently, he did some marvelous writing. I think it's some of the biggest sounding for 5 horns that's ever been written, and gosh, it's too bad, but that's life. I'd hope that we could be doing that some more, but anyway, we got 2 great CDs out, I think, and I really will treasure those.
Well, Bill Perkins, thanks again for taking time with us, and we'll remember Shorty Rogers. And Shorts, as you call him affectionately, really cooks up in catalogs here a lot of listening for us all. And as we sign off in this part of the world, we will remember Milton Shorty Rogers.